All right, strap in, everyone. Today we're taking a deep dive into quantum cryptanalysis. We've got this essay by Jorgo Schneeppert.
Oh, yeah, Schneeppert. This is a good one.
It's a real head-scratcher, to be honest.
Yeah, it is. Schneeppert really lays it out, like, all the stuff we depend on online, you know, banking, talking to people, like, all of it.
Yeah.
National security, like, all that relies on codes that we think are, you know...
Unbreakable.
Yeah, unbreakable.
Right, and then he just throws this...
And then he's like...
quantum computer thing in there.
Boom, quantum computers.
Yeah.
Might not be so unbreakable.
So where do we even begin with all this?
Well, so Schneeppert, he starts out by saying, like, the encryptions that are used everywhere, right? RSA, ECC, all those.
Okay.
They all depend on math. That's really, really hard. Like, factoring huge numbers, like finding all the prime numbers that multiply into, you know, some massive number.
Yeah.
And, like, even for the best supercomputers we've got, that takes forever.
Right, but then you bring in quantum computers.
But quantum computers...
I mean, I know they're still, you know, early stages and all that, but...
They're getting there.
Schneeppert seems to be saying that they could, like, blow all that out of the water.
Yeah, they could. And to understand why, we kind of got to get into the, like, weird stuff, right? Quantum mechanics.
Right.
And Schneeppert, like, he explains these two ideas, superposition and entanglement.
Okay, so, like, superposition, that's like the, Schrodinger's cat thing, right?
Yeah.
That's where, you know, the cat's like dead and alive at the same time until you open the box.
Yeah, that's the basic idea. It's wild, right?
Yeah.
But like in quantum world, things can be in multiple states at once, right? So they can be both things.
At the same time.
Yeah, and so the superposition, that's what lets quantum computers do calculations in a whole different way than the computers we use. Like, they can check out lots of possibilities all at the same time.
Instead of just, like, going...
Instead of going one by one, they're like...
One by one.
Boom, boom, all at once.
So then, no wonder they could crack these codes, I mean.
Yeah.
If they're doing everything at the same time.
Yeah, exactly. And then there's entanglement.
Okay.
Even weirder. So imagine, like, you've got these two particles and they're linked. Like, if you mess with one, the other one changes instantly, even if they're, like, miles apart. Schneeppert, he uses this thing, like, two coins flipped at the same time.
Okay.
They always land on opposite sides, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Always.
That's a lot. But how does all that, like, the weird quantum stuff, how does that turn into a machine that can, like, break codes?
Well, that's where these quantum algorithms come in. Schneeppert, he talks about two of them specifically, Shor's algorithm and Grover's algorithm.
Okay, so these are the, like, bad guys of the story.
Yeah.
The code breakers.
Like the mathematical safe crackers that could, you know, mess everything up.
So Shor's algorithm, that's the one that really messes with, like...
That's the one that's scary.
All the RSA stuff, right?
Yeah, Shor's algorithm goes right after that factoring problem, the one that RSA is built on.
Okay.
So, like, if you had a really powerful quantum computer running Shor's algorithm, it could break RSA. Like, not in a million years, but, like, actually break it.
Like, in a reasonable amount of time?
Yeah, like in a time that matters, you know? And
then Grover's algorithm. That's just as bad.
So Grover's algorithm, it's different. It's more like a brute force attack, but like on steroids. Imagine you're trying to unlock a door, right?
Okay.
But instead of trying one key at a time, you could try millions of keys all at once.
Right.
That's what Grover's algorithm does. It lets a quantum computer try tons of keys at the same time, so it's way faster at finding the right one for some types of encryption.
Okay, so at this point, I'm feeling a little nervous about, you know, all my stuff online. But Schneeppert does give us some hope, right?
Yeah, definitely.
What's this post-quantum cryptography thing he keeps talking about?
Right. So post-quantum cryptography, it's this whole area of research where they're trying to come up with new types of encryption that can stand up to quantum computers.
So it's like a race against time. Can they make these quantum-proof codes?
It is a race against time.
Before the bad guys get these quantum computers up and running.
It totally is. And the stakes are huge.
Yeah.
But the really cool thing is, it's not just theory, you know? Like, there's this group, the National Institute of Standards and Technology.
NIST?
Yeah, NIST. They're already running this global competition to figure out the best post-quantum cryptography.
So it's like the Cryptography Olympics.
It's like the Cryptography Olympics.
All these teams from around the world trying to make the best encryption.
Yeah, exactly. They're testing all these different methods,
Wow.
making sure they're secure and they work well. And it's not just about finding solutions. It's about setting standards
I see.
that everyone can use so we can all move to this post-quantum world smoothly.
Okay, so it's not all doom and gloom. We're not just sitting here waiting for, like, the quantum apocalypse.
We've got options. People are working on it.
That's good to hear.
But to really get what's going on, I think we need to look a bit closer at like how these post-quantum cryptography things actually work.
Okay, let's do it. Let's talk about what kind of defenses we might have against these quantum code breakers. So we've got quantum computers that could break all our codes.
Yeah.
But what about these post-quantum cryptography solutions? Schneepat, he mentions a few, like, what are the big ones in this cryptography arms race?
Well, Schneepat gets into a bunch of different approaches.
Okay.
But one of the most promising ones is this thing called lattice-based cryptography.
Lattice-based. I don't know, when I hear lattice, I think of, like, those garden trellises. Not very high-tech. What's that got to do with encryption?
Yeah, it's a little more abstract than garden trellises, I promise. So a lattice, it's like this math thing,
Okay.
a grid of points, but not just like flat, you know?
Yeah.
It's in multi-dimensional space.
Multi-dimensional.
Like, imagine a web of points, but instead of being in like 2D or 3D, it could be in hundreds of dimensions or even thousands.
Okay, my brain is already starting to hurt. But how do these multi-dimensional lattices, how do they protect our data?
So the whole idea with lattice-based cryptography is that it's really hard
Okay.
to solve certain problems within these lattices. Like, one problem is finding the shortest vector in a lattice. It's like, imagine trying to find the shortest path through this crazy maze.
Okay.
Even with a quantum computer, these problems, they're like really, really tough.
So it's like hiding a needle in a haystack.
Right.
But the haystack is like constantly changing and moving.
Exactly. And the more dimensions you add to the lattice, the harder it gets to find that needle. That's why lattice-based cryptography, it's like a top contender for post-quantum security.
Okay, so that's lattice-based. What else does Schneepat talk about?
Another cool one is code-based cryptography.
Code-based, okay.
That uses these things called error-correcting codes. They were actually made to make sure data gets sent properly.
Or, like making sure your text message doesn't have typos, even if there's like bad reception.
Right, like our phones auto-correcting our typos.
Yeah, exactly, but way more advanced.
Okay.
So in code-based cryptography, they use these error-correcting codes, but they use them to hide the encryption key.
So it's like a secret language?
It's like a secret language
Yeah.
that only the sender and receiver know.
Got it.
And even if someone with a quantum computer tried to listen in, it would just sound like gibberish.
And then Schneepat also mentions something called multivariate polynomial cryptography. What's that?
Oh yeah, that one. That one's based on the idea that it's really hard to solve systems of equations with lots of variables. Like, imagine a giant Sudoku puzzle,
Okay.
but with way more variables, and the relationships between them are like super complicated.
It sounds hard.
It's a tough one.
But how does that work for encryption? Well, they use these really complex equations to make a kind of mathematical lock. And just like with those other ones, lattice-based and code-based, the security of multivariate polynomial cryptography, it all comes down to the idea that these problems are just as hard for quantum computers as they are for regular computers.
Okay, so we've got some good options, it seems like.
Yeah.
But making these algorithms is only part of the story, right? Schneepat, he talks about some of the problems with actually using post-quantum cryptography. Like,
Yep.
what are some things we need to figure out?
Yeah, one of the biggest challenges is that some of these post-quantum algorithms, they take a lot of computing power,
Okay.
way more than the ones we use now. So that means they could slow things down, like online transactions, processing data, especially on devices that don't have a ton of power.
So it's like you trade off security for speed.
Kind of, yeah.
Okay.
Finding the right balance is like the key.
Yeah,
Researchers are working on making these algorithms faster and more efficient. But it's a work in progress. And then there's the whole issue of actually putting these things into practice.
Right, because even if we've got these great algorithms, getting them to work in the real world, that's a whole other thing.
Exactly. We need to make sure these new cryptography systems are put in place, right?
Right.
And that they work with all our existing stuff without creating any like weak spots that hackers could use. It's a huge job that needs everyone to work together, governments, companies, cybersecurity experts, everyone.
And Schneepat, he also points out that it's not just a technical problem, right? There's the whole money and logistics side of things, too.
Totally. Switching over to post-quantum cryptography is going to cost a lot of money for research, development, and getting it all set up. And we'll need to figure out how it works with older systems and how to make sure it doesn't disrupt businesses.
So it's not just about the algorithms themselves.
It's a big, messy problem.
It's like a whole societal thing.
Yeah, societal thing.
That needs planning and everyone working together.
Definitely. But Schneepat, he's really clear that we can't just ignore this, you know?
Right.
The consequences of doing nothing, they're too big.
Yeah, after going through all this, it's a lot to take in. But before we get too lost in the details, I think it's good to step back and look at the bigger picture. Like, what does this all mean for us, for our online lives, for the future of security in this quantum world?
Yeah, good point. Let's zoom out a bit and see what this quantum cryptography revolution could really mean.
All right, so we've talked about the techie stuff with quantum cryptanalysis, and we've looked at some solutions. But Jorgo Schneepat, he doesn't just stop there. He really, widens a lens and looks at the bigger picture.
Right. That's what makes Schneepat's essay so good. He ties all this complex stuff to, what it actually means for the world. He makes it clear that this isn't just some problem for tech companies or governments. This is something that could affect all of us.
Right. And he paints this picture of what could happen if we don't get ready.
Yeah.
Imagine a world where all our private information, banking stuff, medical records, even national secrets, all that stuff could be wide open to quantum attacks.
Exactly. Schneepat shows how crucial cryptography is to our world today. Everything, like secure online shopping, protecting important infrastructure, it all depends on cryptography. If quantum computers could crack those systems, it would be a disaster.
So what do? We talked about post-quantum cryptography, but Schneepat seems to say that's only one part of the solution. What else needs to happen?
Well, Schneepat says we need a multi-pronged approach. One of the key things is awareness.
You mean like making sure everyone understands the danger of quantum computers?
Exactly. It's super important to educate everyone, politicians, business leaders, regular people, about what this technology could mean. We can't just leave it to a few experts to fix this. We all need to be involved.
So it's about creating a sense of urgency. Hey, this is serious stuff.
This is important. We got to do something. And Schneepat also says collaboration is crucial. We need researchers from all sorts of fields, governments and companies, all working together to come up with and put solutions into action.
It's like we need a global effort, like a cryptographic Manhattan Project.
Yeah, that's a good comparison. This is a global problem that needs a global solution. We can't have countries or organizations working on their own.
Schneepat also mentions that this switch to a post-quantum world won't be quick. It'll take time.
Yeah, it'll be a process.
And there will probably be some hiccups along the way.
Definitely. Lots of logistical stuff, money stuff to think about. Changing over to new cryptography systems will be expensive and time-consuming. And we have to be prepared for things to go wrong, unexpected problems.
So we're entering a new technological era.
Totally.
And as with any big change, there's going to be an adjustment period.
For sure. But I think the main takeaway from Schneepat's essay is that we're not helpless. We know enough, and we have the tools to get ready for this quantum future. The challenge is to act, and to act together, to make sure the transition is smooth and safe.
Well, this deep dive into Jorgo Schneepat's essay has been really eye-opening. It's a lot to digest, but I definitely feel a lot more knowledgeable about the potential problems and opportunities of this quantum age.
It's complex stuff,
Yeah,
but it's becoming more and more important. The better we understand quantum computing and its impact, the better prepared we'll be for what's coming.
Absolutely. And on that note, we'll leave you all to think about these quantum possibilities. Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.